Welcome to the Lunch and Learn podcast from the National Fire Chiefs Council to share knowledge and lived experiences on topics about equality, diversity and inclusion. We hope to create a momentum of learning, and we ask you to share widely with your friends and colleagues. Today, Wayne Brown, Deputy Chief Fire Officer from West Midlands Fire and Rescue Service, led the discussion on racial equality, increasing understanding how racial awareness can contribute to the fire and rescue services meeting the needs of employees and communities. To be anti-racist requires us being comfortable being uncomfortable in challenging racism.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to yet another National Fire Chiefs Council Lunch and Learn. My name's Catherine Billing, and I'm from Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service. It is an opportunity to have your lunch if you'd like to, but also we're going to hear from an absolutely amazing speaker today, Wayne Brown, who I just absolute kind of sit in awe of for just so many reasons. An incredible officer, an incredible ambassador, and somebody that truly cares about inclusion, and also about advancing opportunities for people. And as we sit here on the eve of Stephen Lawrence Day, we kind of reflect on what that means. Again, it is about people remembering what's happened in the past, ensuring that we improve quickly on things and ensure that we don't follow in the footsteps of our history and how things kind of impact, in some cases very severely, on people's lives. But it is about that opportunity to just ensure that every second of every day we're trying to help people feel valued, ensure people feel that they are the best that they can be every single time they step through the door of our fire and rescue services. And that's not only as somebody who receives our service, but also for people who, again, are very proud to work for us. And it's about us ensuring that we create every opportunity we can for people to feel, like I said, valued, create the opportunity for things to be fair for them. And indeed, I know that that's why each and every one of you are indeed here today. So like we said, today we've got Wayne Brown, and he will be providing us with an overview of racial equality and also how that links into some of the work that we've been doing within the National Fire Chiefs Council. And that includes a document that we publish about Black people, and that document is called an Equality of Access document. For those of you that aren't aware of those documents, they're a suite of documents we're putting together, by no means a finished article. So created a number of these documents around LGBT people, Black people, neurodiversity are the key ones that are out at the moment, and more to come in the future. But they really are a starter for 10 in relation to just helping services maybe that are just starting on that journey of understanding diversity and wanting just to have a few more facts, figures, in some cases anecdotal evidence, but also research that may help them just do things a bit differently, might help them with their IRMPs or their CRMPs, might help them with their workforce strategies, might help them with their positive action. Like I said, though, for any of you that are looking at those documents, of course, be critical and feedback, but be very kind, because they are the first ones that we've done, and we recognise that these will evolve over time for sure. So Wayne, over to yourself. Thank you so much for joining us today. Got in excess of 100 people on, and I'll pass it over to you. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so good afternoon. Firstly, can I start by thanking you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join me here today for this Lunch and Learn session, part of the NFCC People Programme. For those that don't know me, as Catherine just said, I'm Wayne Brown. I am the Deputy Chief Fire Officer of West Mids Fire Service. And like Catherine and others, I'm part of the National Fire Chiefs Council Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Project Board, which is a really, really worthwhile project that I'm really pleased to be a part of. Okay, so in terms of today, one of the areas that obviously I'm really, really passionate about is racial equality, diversity and inclusion. And events like today are vital to ensure that people like myself support the sector, while also hopefully giving you an insight into racial equality and anti-racism, my lived experience as well as that of the experience of my service. It's also a fitting opportunity today to mark the murder of Stephen Lawrence. Today is Stephen Lawrence Day. And Stephen's murder is something that Me and my family felt quite hard living in South London, literally 10 minutes away from the spot where Stephen was murdered, and saw firsthand the effects that his death had on my family and friends as well as the local community. Both Stephen's death and the dignity and determination showed by both Doreen and Neville Lawrence, for me, was something remarkable and really pleasing to see that obviously justice was served in terms of some of Stephen's killers being brought to justice. The way Doreen and Neville conducted themselves has certainly encouraged me to always try and do more to raise awareness in terms of racial equality. If we think about the word equality, equality is about ensuring that every individual has an equal opportunity to make the most of their lives and their talents. The equality of access, it means actively seeking to engage these groups that may be unaware of our services that we have to offer as fire and rescue services and also other public services. But also we need to work more to make sure that we reduce the fire risk and other life risks to these communities, while also making sure that we understand the needs and the differences that we need to use to approach communicating and certainly making sure that we are attractive to members of the community. The NFCC Equality of Access for Black People, which is still in development, but it's one of 4 Equality of Access documents. It's widely accepted that many Black British people face daily challenges of a sort that are not experienced by white people. Indeed, frequently, certainly this is also experienced by other ethnic groups, and certainly it's important that we, as I said, as emergency services and as a sector, consider and research and always be at the forefront of what we can do to communicate and connect with our communities for a number of reasons. One, obviously, because we are here to provide the best possible service to the community and make sure they're safe. But also we want to be representative of that community, and to be able to best serve that community, representation is a key part of what we do. So the NFCC Equality of Access document for Black people, and likewise the other Equality of Access documents, the NFCC's way under the People Programme and Anne Millington, of us ensuring that we consider all the diversity that's out there in trying to provide the best services as part of our community risk management plans. So looking ahead to today, what I plan to do today is take you through what racism is. We'll look at diversity and inclusion, but also how this is different to just being diverse. So the difference between inclusion and diversity. We'll also look at something that is really, really important. And for a Black man in society and a Black man within the fire sector, anti-racism is exactly where by the end of lunch that I want us all to be and everybody to be thinking about. I'd also like to urge everyone on the call to truly understand the difference between being a racist, being a non-racist and being anti-racist. And hopefully you may well have heard those terms previously, but we'll talk about what they mean and demonstrations of racism, being a non-racist and being anti-racist. We'll then have a brief look at what we in the West Midlands Fire Service are doing to ensure that we keep moving forward and progressing around tackling diversity and anti-racism issues and equality issues. And likewise, we'll also use the experience of the Black Lives Matter global movement and the death of George Floyd to highlight our experience. I think it's really appropriate now that with all that's gone on in the last 24 hours that we acknowledge the fact that the killer of George Floyd has been brought to justice and was found guilty in a court of law last night within the United States. And certainly for me, and I know a lot of people within the West Mids Fire Service, the effects of George Floyd's death hit us hard as a service, hit our staff hard as individuals, and certainly what part of our experience that I'll share with you today is about how we dealt with that situation. At the end of it, as I said, we'll have some questions and I'll leave some time for questions. And as we are at a lunch and learn session, for those that have been around long enough in the style of a ready, steady cook program, we'll have some green and red peppers. You can tell me how you found our lunchtime session. So hopefully, as you can see, we've got quite a bit to go through. It will be really informative and engaging. And certainly, as I said, I'm happy to take any questions. And I know the team from the EDI project board are on the line. So we're really pleased to answer any questions or comments that you may have in relation to today's presentations. So moving on to my next slide. So what is racism? Racism obviously is a term that lots of people have heard about, lots of people know, some of us live and see in our everyday lives. It's institutional. Sir William Macpherson carried out a review of the Metropolitan Police Service and he found that they were institutionally racist previously. And I know Cressida Dick and the team down in London within the Met have worked really hard to try and overcome some of the issues that were highlighted as part of that report. Racism can be binary. It's a learnt behaviour or attitude. But racism is also pervasive and can manifest itself in several different ways and several different overlapping forms, including cultural, structural, and as we've already said, institutional. But what drives racism? Well, it can be anything from stereotypes, from prejudice, from learnt attitudes or behaviour, as I've said, but also fear. One of the real drivers of racism is fear, and it's a fear of difference. But when we talk about racism, we cannot talk about racism without talking about diversity and inclusion. Diversity means understanding individuals in unique and understanding each individual, is unique, and also recognising that we all have individual differences, and it's the representation of our differences, but also the celebration of our differences. And that's exactly what diversity is. These can be along the dimensions of race, so i.e. for somebody like myself as a black person. It can also be ethnicity, it can be gender, it can be sexual orientation, and it can also be social, economic status, and likewise age, to name but a few. Benefits from having a workplace influence and a diverse workforce, I'd like to think we all know, but it allows us to have varied perspectives, which can lead to better problem solving. It can lead to a more well-rounded workforce, and that in turn can provide more creativity for us as fire services. It can also assist our service connect with the communities we serve, which, as we all know, is vital for the services we provide. The benefits for me, and certainly hopefully everybody on this call, are there for all of us to see. One of the real drivers in terms of making sure that we are diverse, as I said, is about understanding difference, generating difference, and welcoming difference to our workplaces, to our lives, and to the people we engage with. As well as diversity, a concept within the term anti-racism is inclusion. So in terms of inclusion, it's different from diversity, and is everybody being given a voice, but also a sense of belonging. Inclusion is not the idea that you should be involved or included, because I include you and I include people is being diverse. So I'm increasing my diversity by including you. Inclusion is, are you going to give everyone the opportunity to have involvement? Are you giving everybody the opportunity to share their lived experience? That's inclusion. Creating an inclusive culture and environment is making people feel respected and valued for who they are, but also allowing everyone to come to work and be their natural self. An example of this will be when thinking about inclusion, and I'll give you a real life example here. Schools, and currently within the curriculum, carry out different tasks and look at different areas to educate their staff. One of those areas is around Shakespeare and plays and English literature, and quite a lot of schools study Romeo and Juliet. I know of a school within London where, because it was a diverse class and a diverse group, the teacher decided that lots of races and lots of people of colour and from different ethnicities, that they would study Othello. For those that don't know, Othello is also a Shakespeare play, but Othello is a black character and he's one of the main characters. And the reason the teacher chose to use Othello in this example with this class was to create an inclusive environment. So that teacher wanted to make a change so the class could share their own experiences and have their own connection with Othello. This then creates a sense of belonging, so everybody's voice can be heard. So this is what we're trying to achieve, and this is what we're trying to do as part of being anti-racist. It's about, one, having representation and celebrating difference, but it's also about ensuring that we give everybody a voice and a belonging. Anti-racism. So anti-racism is the part of the wider area of inclusion, but it's a sense of belonging, as I said, and giving everybody that voice. And today, what I really want to do is spotlight anti-racism. The question is, what can we do in terms of racial equality to support people of colour, also known as black and minority ethnic? I'm not saying that there are not other inequalities out there. We all know there are other inequalities out there because we see it on a daily basis. But what we're looking specifically at today is about support for black people and minority ethnic communities, but likewise, as I said, also known as people of colour. Today we'll have a look at what these things are that we need to know as anti-racist leaders within the fire service. We want to create an understanding. So we'll look at racism, diversity and inclusion, which is what we've done, but we'll also go on to look at really and truly what anti-racism means. Anti-racism is understanding three things. It understands what, who and how. And how I'll break that down for you today is the next bullet point, which says 3 Ps. So what is racism? So racism is 3 things. It's people, and it's around treating people differently because of the colour of their skin or their race. It's about power, which is racism about power within the system. It's systemic power, it's embedded within history, and it's also societal. And it's also about prejudice. So making prejudgments about somebody because of their race. The who can drive and perpetuate racism? So that's where we hear terms like white privilege. Now, this at times can create and lead to a defensive response to white people because they feel that they're somehow being blamed for something that they feel they've got no control of. We are who we are born as we are born. But it's also really important that you understand that white privilege exists. We appreciate as a black person that intentionally or unintentionally, certain people within society create the conditions for racism. This is because of the power structures that exist within society. Some people have more power than others, and we also need to understand that. But also sometimes without knowing it, people are reinforcing those power structures on a daily basis. And in terms of the how does racism affect people? And how does it affect people of colour differently? An example I'll give to you, and a real life example, sort of using myself to hopefully get you to understand where I'm coming from. So if you think about racism as a rucksack, my rucksack as a black man within society is heavier than a lot of white colleagues on this call today. That's not your fault. I'm not blaming you for that as a black man within society. But it's important that you understand that the power structures that exist means that my rucksack will be heavier than yours. We all carry rucksacks, but I need you to understand, because of those power structures, that at times I will struggle, my rucksack will feel heavier than yours, will be heavier than yours. When I'm asking you to be an ally, and an ally is so key to anti-racism and what we as a society and within the fire sector want to achieve, I'm not asking you to carry my rucksack for me. What I'm asking you to do is understand that my rucksack is heavy and why my rucksack is heavy. Yes, your rucksack will also be heavy because of other things you may face within your life on a daily basis. But I also need you to understand that my rucksack is heavy and I'll be tired over a period of time because I'm having to deal with racism and inequality and societal issues on a daily basis. But my tiredness, as I said, is around the society and around those societal issues and the social pressures that I feel. The whole idea of being an anti-racist leader is when life is hard and I'm struggling to breathe and I'm struggling to catch my breath and take a look at everything that's going on around me. What I need from you is to stand side by side with me. I don't need you to carry my rucksack, but I need you to stand shoulder to shoulder with me. And sometimes actually I and others need you to speak up for us. We need you to be allies. We need you to challenge. We need you to make a difference. That is somebody that's anti-racist. That is being anti-racist, and that is anti-racism. Hopefully, using that example, you understand what I mean by anti-racism. You understand what I mean by the term white privilege. You won't be offended by the term white privilege. You don't feel you need to defend yourself if someone uses the term white privilege, because we're not blaming you for being white. We're not blaming you for the colour of your skin or for being British. What we're asking you to understand is at times, because of the colour of my skin, because of the colour of the skin of colleagues on this call, we face different pressures and strains than you will do, and our life can be harder and more tiring because we have to try and battle this on a daily basis, as well as trying to do our job and just be our natural selves. So we've spoken about anti-racism, so let's have a look at what's in between the term, as I said, racist and anti-racist, and there's the term non-racist. So non-racist is somebody who's a bystander, somebody that whilst they won't overtly say anything racist, they won't conduct in any racist activities, they don't condone racism, what they will do is unfortunately not say anything or be a bystander or be quiet while they're in the company or the presence of people that may well communicate racist thoughts or carry out racist activities. That's a non-racist. What we're asking people to do as a black person in society is be anti-racist and speak up. 3 terms. Racist creates racism and perpetuates racism. A non-racist, somebody that sits back, is a bystander, not necessarily through choice, but may speak afterwards and say, I really don't agree with that, I felt really uncomfortable with that. But that's not what we want. We want you to speak up. And what we want you to be is anti-racist. And an anti-racist is somebody who positively demonstrates and challenges through their actions. So something I want you all to take away from today's lunch session, and a term I want you to be familiar with, is around getting comfortable being uncomfortable. Being anti-racist at times can be uncomfortable. I'm aware of that as a black man, and other people on this call are aware of that. To achieve racial equality and to ensure our services and the society that we live in is exactly what we want it to be, I would urge everybody on this call to please get comfortable being uncomfortable. This is the only way that we will make progress and see change within society. In terms of the West Midlands Fire Service, what have we done? Well, we like to think and we know that we've done a lot and we continue to do a lot. We're not saying that we're experts by any way, shape or form, but we are proud of our achievements and we are proud that we are actively trying to ensure that we are an anti-racist organisation and our staff understand what it is to be anti-racist and the part they play. We're committed to creating an environment where our staff come to work and be their natural self. As leaders and as a strategic leader and as our strategic team within the West Mids Fire Service, we are committing to being comfortable, being uncomfortable. And we actively encourage our staff to do the same. Some of the things we're doing, just to take you through some of the initiatives and things we're doing as a service. Positive action. We have always set ourselves ambitious targets. In 2016, we set a target of having 20% black and minority ethnic staff in terms of positive action recruitment. So we wanted to make sure that we actively recruited a minimum of 20% of black and minority ethnic staff into the service from our positive action team. We continue to challenge ourselves to improve and increase black and minority ethnic staff within the service. And we've gone on to set an ambitious target of having 35% BME staff by 21-22. Now, that's a really hard target to try and achieve. It's something that we're going to strive to achieve, and we know it's going to be difficult, but we don't want to just be safe. We want to continue to stretch ourselves and set realistic, hard, ambitious targets that we want our staff to strive to achieve. We've used targeted recruitment, and we've got people on this call today from within West Midlands Fire Service, within our diversity, inclusion, cohesion and equality team, who have led this targeted recruitment. And what I mean by that is we've actively gone out there and used different methods. We've used data, we've used analysis, we've gone out and used social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We've looked at what a lot of society use and read and places they go to as part of our targeted recruitment to ensure that we get the right people within the service. West Midlands, as hopefully all of you know, is a real diverse part of England with a fantastic diverse community, and we want to be representative of that community we serve. We're currently at 3 times the national average of fire and rescue services for BAME staff recruitment. And that's a really important part to stress today. Our fire and rescue service has 3 times the national average of fire and rescue service recruitment, because that's how seriously we want to make sure we take the representation of our staff. We've actively used the Equality Act 2010. And for those that don't know, the Equality Act 2010 has 2 real prevalent sections, 158 and 159. Section 158 is positive action that I've spoken about, and we have used Section 159, which allows all employees to treat an applicant or an employee with a protected characteristic more favourably than somebody with an equal score for the same role. We previously had run a recruitment campaign for a promotion process to a role within West Mids Fire Service. We had 2 candidates that finished on the same score, one of which had a protected characteristic, and we used Section 159 to appoint that individual into the role. We did it knowing that it would cause conversation and discussion, but we did it openly and transparently, and we also communicated that to our staff, explaining the values and the reasons why we did it and what that would achieve for us as a service. So in terms of what we do in the proactivity, we're continually looking to innovate and challenge and use whatever sources and powers that we can use to diversify our workforce to assist the service that we want to deliver to the communities that we serve. What we've also done is we've engaged closely with staff, and we're having and continue to have critical conversations. Critical conversations and providing a safe space for staff to have these conversations. And one of those areas we've sought actively to make sure that we continue to progress is around having staff networking groups, which I'll come on to in a minute. But we've had critical conversations around things like Black Lives Matter, and I'll touch on how that affected our service, what we did, and likewise how we continue to work with our staff to make sure those critical conversations take place. But it's also about all of us on this call finding a safe space for us as individuals, but within our services, to make sure that staff feel that they can have these conversations without fear and in an open, transparent way. So I've just touched on it, networking groups. In terms of what we do, we've got 4 established networking groups, which are Inspire, which is a group made up of Black and minority ethnic staff. We've got Affinity, which is a women's group within the service, and these groups are both for uniformed and non-uniformed staff. We've also got Fire Out, which is our LGBTQ plus networking group, and we've got AFSA, which is our Asian Fire Service Association networking group. In my role as Deputy Chief Fire Officer, I meet with each of these groups on a bi-monthly basis. The idea of that meeting is for us to come together and discuss issues that they, as those networking groups, may be experiencing or want to raise with me or raise to the service. We use it as a collective, collaborative stage for the networking groups to discuss issues that they may be facing that they want to share. But we also use it to discuss positivity within the service, initiatives and events that may be coming up that we can all support each other. And I use it as feedback and as critical analysis for the service to ask our networking groups how they feel that our service can be improved. What do I need to do as Deputy Chief Fire Officer? What does West Midlands Fire Service and our strategic enabling team need to do to enable the success of our service and making sure that, as I said, we provide that service where everybody can come to work to be their natural self? It's a really, really good process and a really fantastic idea and organisational sort of initiative around networking groups. And we have seen firsthand how these networking groups have improved us as a service. They've challenged us. They've asked questions of us as a service. And we welcome that challenge because we want to continually strive to improve what we do, how we deliver our services, and ultimately the service we provide to the people of the West Midlands. Following on from the discussion around networking groups, it's really important for me to discuss and raise the issue now around Black Lives Matter. And obviously last night we all received the news that the trial of Derek Chauvin was completed, and he was found guilty of 2 counts of murder and a count of manslaughter in terms of the death of George Floyd. In terms of West Mids Fire Service, this was a real pivotal moment for us, as it was for everybody globally. We, in evaluating our performance and what we did at the time, we were challenged by our networking groups and by our staff in terms of our reaction time to the death of George Floyd and our support of Black Lives Matter as a service. That was a really just challenge, and it was an appropriate challenge because whilst we had been having conversations around Black Lives Matter, the global movement and the death of George Floyd, we hadn't immediately communicated to our staff, to our workforce, that we supported Black Lives Matter. We supported what Black Lives Matter stands for. And in line with our values, we were against any form of racism or inequality. And our service and our staff needed to hear that and wanted to know that the service was communicating that message. We also then engaged with staff, and we spoke to our staff networking groups, as I said, and we received feedback, and we took that feedback on board, and we actively promoted and tweeted our support of Black Lives Matter, our support of our staff supporting the Black Lives Matter movement, and communicated out to our staff that we wanted to ensure that everybody from the black community, from our black staff members, could come to work, could have a conversation around a mess table in an office about how they were feeling about the death of George Floyd, how it may well have triggered some emotion within those individuals around their own upbringing, their own experiences of life, and that actually it was a safe space to be able to do that. We also then used the opportunity to make it a part of an ongoing development for the organisation. Really pleasing, our Inspire networking group, as I said, which is our Black and minority ethnic networking group, joined the Chief Fire Officer and myself and other members of our strategic enabling team, hosting a middle manager session. So all the middle managers within our organisation, where we specifically spoke about Black Lives Matter. The Chief Fire Officer, as a white British male and as an ally and as a leader within our service, actively communicated to our service that we were standing with Black Lives Matter, we supported Black Lives Matter, and he encouraged the conversation and the safe space within West Mids Fire Service for our staff to be able to come to work, be their natural self, and have these conversations. The middle manager session was really, really powerful, really emotional. We've got a middle manager within our service that's part of our Inspire group, and she led the conversation in terms of her own feelings around Black Lives Matter, how it made her feel in terms of her role and society, and that promoted some fantastic response from white colleagues within the service who actively admitted that they didn't understand how the death of a black man in America could trigger such emotion with people within this country and black people within England and around the world, but also then understood some of the issues that we faced as a race and as people over many, many years. So having those conversations, having that ongoing development, which is something we're committed to, this is where we as a service want to be. This is exactly what we as a service are trying to achieve, and it's something that we're really, really proud of. I would urge everybody on this call from respective services around the country and around the UK to create that safe space, to understand what it is to be anti-racist, to have these ongoing conversations, and to support your staff to be their natural self and feel like they can come to work and give their very best to the communities that they serve. For us, it is a start of an ongoing conversation. It's something we are committed to. It's something that we will continue to explore as part of our development of our middle managers and our staff within our supervisory manager cadre as well. But also it's about our staff across the service understanding and accepting difference, promoting diversity, being inclusive, creating that safe space, and being uncomfortable. That for us is where we want to be. That's what we're striving to achieve. And I'm really proud that I work within a service that have the values that I uphold and have the values that we should all uphold as a core value for what we're trying to achieve going forward. As being supportive of Black Lives Matter, being supportive of the movement as a service. Obviously, what you've got on your screen in front of you is a picture of one of our fire stations and one of our watches taking the knee in support of Black Lives Matter. The service received criticism, and I'll be open and honest with you, from members of the public and from within our own service, from people that felt that this was a political matter that West Mids Fire Service shouldn't be a part of. We should stay out of political arguments. Actually, for us, this isn't a political matter. This is a societal issue. This is an issue around value. This is an issue around equality. This is an issue around diversity. And these are all the things that we hold dear in West Mids Fire Service and what we're trying to achieve. So supporting our staff, communicating and retweeting pictures and messages of our staff supporting the Black Lives Matter movement was important to us, was absolutely important to our staff, but likewise was important to our growth and our development and our understanding of issues around race, around equality, around diversity, around inclusion, and around being anti-racist. So I hope you can see from what I've covered today that as a service, we are fully committed to anti-racism and to racial equality. I hope you'll understand and have learned about some of the real component parts of being anti-racist, and you'll join me in promoting anti-racism, promoting racial equality, and being real leaders within your own organisations and your own services in making sure that we create an environment and a society that is fit for all of us, our children, and the next generation of firefighters within the fire sector, but also is a place that we all want to come to and be a part of and live in. That concludes my presentation in terms of the bits I wanted to cover. Really happy to take any questions, thoughts, comments. Likewise, as I said, I know we've got members of the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Project Board on the call. So if you've got any questions or comments or anything you want to ask of anything I've just covered, then please feel free to ask your question. Over to you, Catherine.
Thank you. And just on behalf of, from myself and everybody, again, you just speak so powerfully, you really do, in relation to your own personal lived experience, but just how you translate that in the context of how a leader then takes that feeling and makes it real within organisations to create that more inclusive environment. So thank you very much indeed.
I do feel what Wayne has said has been absolutely fantastic. Sorry, I've got the little one with me.
Don't apologise.
I feel though we need more mentors, more allies as our white colleagues to help us get up to that ladder, because I still sit around the organisation and we mention about, equality and becoming more diverse, but I don't see many black women, minorities on our senior leadership team. And I feel if you haven't got that, no matter what you do, coming from the bottom as firefighters, if you have not got a person of colour that can stand on a senior leadership table and make a constructive decision, I think that we have got a hell of a long way to go, to be quite frank.
No, definitely. Your thoughts, Wayne?
No, thanks, Winston, and I absolutely support that. I suppose a couple of things I'll communicate to everyone. So a couple of years ago, for those that don't know, every year we have the Local Government Association annual conference. That is attended by members and chairs of fire authorities, all the senior leaders within the fire sector, so normally chief fire officer or principal officer. And it struck me, as somebody that attended that for quite a few years, one year, that looking around the room, I was one of only two people in that room across the whole of the UK fire and rescue sector of colour that was black or minority ethnic across all of our services. My challenge on the day to the LGA members and to other chief fire officers was to look at their own services, to actively look to try and assist diversity within their own organisations. I asked the question, are we saying there are no black and minority ethnic staff within the UK Fire and Rescue Service outside of me and another individual that can or should be sitting within a principal officer role? So it's something that all of us need to consider as fire and rescue services. West Mids, I sit here as proof that as a Deputy Chief Fire Officer that actually it is possible. I'm proud to be a role model, and I'm proud to continue to work hard with others, with colleagues like Catherine and others to keep promoting equality and diversity. we have made, as a sector, fantastic strides in women now being at the forefront of our organisation. So if you look in the last 5 years, how many women chief fire officers we have now across the sector, congratulations to Catherine in terms of her upcoming promotion to chief fire officer, and that is an outstanding achievement. I want us to be just as focused about black and minority ethnic principal officers as we have been in the last 5 years about ensuring that our representation of women across the sector is as it should be. So it's something that I will continue to raise, Winston. It's something that certainly I think all of us in our respective leadership roles need to promote. And it's something that we as a sector absolutely need to improve going forward. And for me, listen, it's ongoing work. The work needs to continue because I want to one day go to the LGA conference where there is a real balanced proportion of different people from different ethnicities, from different races, from different sexes within that room representing the UK Fire and Rescue Service.
Thank you. Really well said. And the bit as well that ourselves as kind of leaders across that sector we need to start to do is absolutely number one, in order to get that representation, we need to make sure that panels are really balanced as well. You know, again, that you do sometimes kind of promote based on what you look like and what other people that you work with looks like. So again, getting the processes right, which break down the barriers of kind of institutional kind of racism, is really important as well. Look at not only how we behave, but what we're doing, making sure that each of those are inclusive.
Hello, thank you very much indeed. That was an amazing speech. And I'd just like to say that every interaction I have with staff at West Mids is phenomenal. It's brilliant. And I can only aspire to kind of follow in their footsteps. So thank you very much indeed. One question that I'd be quite interested in is, do you think that your lived experience, Wayne, has helped to shape the journey that West Mids have been on regarding EDI?
So I suppose a couple of things. Thank you, Sam, first and foremost, for your sort of warm praise of West Mids Fire Service, and I'll make sure that's communicated to our staff. So thank you. It's really nice to hear that. Certainly, in terms of West Mids, I'll be clear. I joined West Mids in November 19, so I've only been with the service for 1.5 years. It's really important for me to say that some of the stuff we've spoken about today and the initiatives that West Mids have introduced have not been led by me. They were in place before I joined. I'm really, for me, it's really important to ensure that everyone understands that having the chief fire officer that we've got, having that ally, having a white male that is influential and promotes equality, diversity and inclusion and stands for all the right values is vitally important to me and other staff. What I've hopefully been able to do is add, absolutely, my lived experience, my 27.5 years prior to joining West Mids and 29 years service now, my experience as a black man within the fire sector, and that's been a real varied experience as well, from joining London back in 1992, from serving on the streets of East London, from having people come up to me in the streets and say how proud they were to see a black firefighter, to being on a watch where people thought it was okay to shout racial abuse out of a fire appliance window to a member of the black community and being actively able to challenge that. My lived experience has stood me in good stead. It's why I am so passionate about ensuring that I lead and support others to achieve. And certainly for us as a service, we have got some fantastic leaders across all roles within the West Mids. And I'm going to name check someone on this call today. I don't know if she's on. One of our middle managers, a lady called Samantha Samuels. She's one of our leaders of Inspire, which is our networking group. Sam is a middle manager. Sam quite often holds the chief fire officer, myself and others to account in terms of her challenge of what we are doing as a service to promote equality and inclusion. And having members like that within your service and having other white members of staff within your service that fully support the activities that we're trying to achieve makes us the service that we are, and certainly just keeps us moving forward in terms of what we want to achieve. So, my lived experience has absolutely been crucial in how I look at what we do and some of the initiatives we try to generate. But as I said, it's a collective team effort, and I'm really proud to be a part of a fantastic team.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Thank you very much for your honest response, and well done. Thank you.
Thank you very much for everybody today. Wayne, thank you so much on behalf of all of us. But I think that absolutely demonstrates, the value that you've brought to us. And also thank you so much to everybody for your contributions. Final bits to say, anti-racism, that's fine. You might not be racist, but hey, let's be anti-racist and let's challenge. And the other bit I love today is everyone stay uncomfortable, because that way you're progressing, that way you're learning, that way you are championing change. So thank you very much. Stay uncomfortable, everybody, and take care.
I hope you have found this podcast informative and it has given you insight. All Lunch and Learn sessions are available at www.ukfrs.com.